In 1993, Williams led a team of scientists on a trip to study Galeras. Although the volcano was now active, there had been no recent eruptions or explosions.
In mid-1992, it had an explosion, and since that time, almost 6 months, it had been really quiet. It's still active, still dangerous, but quiet.
Unaware of what danger awaited them, a colleague of Stan's filmed their preparation before they headed up the volcano.
About a dozen people went into the volcano that day. We maintained radio contact with the observatory so we could hear about any changes. We had a great time, a few hours of working together with no sense of unusual danger at all. The volcano was a great subject of science. We were doing it. We were really working together.
In a matter of seconds, everything changed.
Well, we were close to finishing the work. It was midday when the clouds usually come in and it's time to leave. So I was standing on the edge of the crater, the rim, talking with one Colombian colleague and a tourist with his sons, looking down into the crater. It gave about 10 seconds of warning, which meant the ground shook. Rocks fell into the crater. I yelled, "We got to get out of here." Before anybody could really react, it exploded.
In the blink of an eye, Galeras released over 40 years of pent-up energy. Rock, ash, and lava spewed up from the crater.
Well, the explosion was extremely powerful. It just sent rocks flying all over, and rocks flew in all directions. Big rocks, hot rocks.
Stan did the only thing he could. He ran.
Rocks were as big as television sets falling around us. I made it 10 meters or something, I don't know for sure, but before the first big one struck me right in the side of my head, knocked a hole in my head, knocked me flat. I picked myself up and ran. Maybe another 10 meters before the next bad one broke my left leg and shattered my right leg. I fell on my face. My foot was barely attached. So I crawled to get behind a big rock because the rocks which are flying laterally, those are the killers, and I had to get behind some barrier, which I found.
Unable to move, Stan lay there behind the rock as the eruption continued.
The eruption became then a column rising a few kilometers high, and ash and rocks were raining down for about 15 minutes. If a rock is coming right straight at you, it's the one which is going to hit you, so you have to roll out of the way. Finally, the eruption comes to an end for 15 minutes, but I'm on fire all over because the rocks were so hot they set my backpack on fire, burned into my back, my pants were on fire and everything.
Stan knew better than anyone what Galeras was capable of doing next. As he lay close to death, he feared a second eruption.
Another hour later, another eruption. Not nearly as powerful as the first one. But we had studied the geology so much, I really thought when the second eruption began that it was probably the end. I had put together this history of how eruptions were these powerful, energetic things which cleared the throat of the volcano, and then pyroclastic flows came out over and over in the history of Galeras.
If Galeras behaved as Stan expected it to, surviving the second eruption would have been next to impossible.
I thought that's what I was going to see, a pyroclastic flow coming down the rim.
Pyroclastic flows are formed when heavy volcanic dust and ash are churned by searing volcanic gases. This highly destructive, superheated cloud rushes down the volcano's slopes at speeds of over 100 miles per hour. With temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, pyroclastic flows are hot enough to melt glass and incinerate virtually anything in its path. Luckily, Stan Williams was mistaken. The second eruption was not pyroclastic. 2 hours later, he was rescued.
It was the most energetic explosion we'd seen in 5 years, and it killed. 6 scientists were instantly dead, 3 tourists were killed, and I, by just a fluke, was close to dead, but not quite there. I was in bad shape. But I basically felt like I'm alive, I'm okay, I'll get back to work.
The explosion on Galeras killed 9 people that day, but the city of Pasto was spared the devastation of a pyroclastic flow. On the tiny Caribbean island of Montserrat, the Soufriere volcano was not so forgiving. Montserrat was a patchwork of lush green forests and fertile valleys. Known locally as the Emerald Island, it was paradise to American David Lee and the 11,000 other residents who called it home.
Montserrat was the most wonderful place, not only to visit, but to live. Beautiful, lush. I came here with my wife and one son just about 20 years ago, and the travel guides all said Montserrat was off the beaten path, the way the Caribbean used to be. The people are the sweetest. It was all true.
The Soufriere volcano had been dormant for over 500 years. Suddenly, it announced to the residents of Montserrat that something was very wrong.
It was here on July 18th of 1995 that steam eruptions began to take place up in the crater.
Gas and steam began spurting from high up on slopes above the capital city of Plymouth. Within days, the first eruptions began. For the people of this Caribbean paradise, life was never going to be the same.
It wasn't long after that, 3 or 4 months, I decided to take my camera and actually walk up the side of the crater. You can see it over there in the sunlight.
David Lee had been documenting activities surrounding the volcano since the initial blast. One day, he headed up the mountainside with his camera to see for himself what was inside the crater.
Don't do this at home. It's right in here you start to hear it. And it makes your heart beat real fast. There's a path that goes right up to the crater edge, and I said, well, I'm going to turn my camera on, and I'm going to show you what it looks like down in the crater. This is my last trip, and it's hot already, and it's spewing right now. There's an eruption right now on Langs. That's hot stuff going off. Just as I walked up to the crater rim, a phreatic eruption took place, throwing stones and pebbles and steam and ash up in the air. That's Star River. She hasn't fired up too bad. I'm just going to take a snapshot, and I'm getting out of here.
A cloud of ash and rock flew thousands of feet into the air, showering the slope that David Lee was desperately trying to make his way down.
It began to fall down all around me, and I set the record for running down the side of that volcano. This is just for recording, in case something happens. I'm setting the record of going down. Chances peak. And she's blowing hot and heavy behind me. Right when I walked up to the ridge, she just let loose. And I'm heading down. It's 2,003 steps, and I'm catching every second or third one. But the thing about it is you gotta pace yourself. Because if you go too fast, you collapse. Oh. Okay, Lord. Put my trust and faith in you. That was my last trip up there, folks. See the time. 5 o'clock. In case something happens, somebody gets this camera, you'll have a record. If the camera doesn't have a meltdown, I'm gonna shut her off and run.
The eruption was the largest phreatic explosion since the Soufriere volcano became active. A phreatic eruption occurs when rising magma reaches underground water. The water rapidly turns to steam, then explodes in a deadly shower of molten rock and ash.
Well, that's what you call in your face. Do I look scared? Let me take it and put it on auto. Now do I look scared? I'm not out of here yet. I'm only down about 600 feet. If the whole thing went, wouldn't have a chance up here. I think that's the closest I ever thought about being dead. The whole top of the mountain was just shivering, 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 up and down under your feet. And you could feel this awesome power underneath vibrating, wanting to come out. So to me, there's no doubt that down below there is magma that wants to come out. Oh, Lord. Bye.
David Lee made it down the volcano safely, but in volcanic terms, the eruption that day was minor. Over the next several months, the eruptions got stronger. The people of Montserrat began preparing for the worst. An exclusion zone was established on the southern side of the island, where residents were ordered to evacuate. More than half the population left Montserrat. For those that remained, dealing with eruptions became a part of daily life.
One day early on in the eruption, I was driving away from the volcano after an eruption, and the ash cloud actually came down over the area that I was in, and at high noon, everything turned to pitch black. There was lightning, thunder. We're at the height of the day, and it's pitch black, lightning. Lots of lightning. And I really wondered if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. It's high noon, and the guy ahead of me is just leading me out of here. I got one little pad. I mean, it went to pitch black, like you were in an underground cave. Very scary experience. I'll tell you, it's getting lighter, but that doesn't help, you know? As we pass it here, you can see bright skies up ahead.
Consisting of mostly ash and small rocks, the material ejected from the volcano that day was so dense it blanketed the island in a thick ash cloud and caused total darkness for more than 15 minutes. For the next 2 years, the pattern was the same. The volcano would swell up into a dome, become unstable, and then collapse into a pyroclastic flow. But there was still no final explosion. Then, in June 1997, there was a major eruption, much bigger than anything before. Almost the entire southern half of Montserrat became uninhabitable as pyroclastic flows rushed out in all directions.
Pyroclastic flows came right out of the face of the volcano here. Hot block and ash flow, some 600 degrees centigrade, rushed down the northern slopes of the volcano into the zone that they had said was the exclusion zone, but people had gone back in there to reap some crops that they had planted, and 19 Montserratians were killed that day. It was a very sad day in Montserrat.
Flow after flow gradually scorched and burned the once tropical valleys and hillsides. It happened again in August. This time, pyroclastic flows poured into Plymouth. "80% of the city was destroyed. The island of Montserrat was brought to its knees. By 1999, it had been nearly 5 years since the Soufrière volcano roared to life and transformed this quiet paradise. But it seems the quiet has returned. Most volcanologists believe the volcano is becoming dormant. The residents of Montserrat are beginning to feel they have turned the corner. And even though 1/3 of the island remains uninhabitable, people have started to return.
We're back up to 4,500, maybe 5,000, because the volcano now is gone back to sleep. And not only are people returning to Montserrat, but people are coming to look at this volcano and to see what's happened. It's a latter-day Pompeii, rising from the ash.
Ever since humans first witnessed nature's awesome power, we have been captivated by its beauty. Volcanoes are crucibles of change. They create many of the elements that make life on Earth possible. But survivors like Stan Williams also know that these incredible forces can destroy life too. After nearly 3 years, Stan traveled back to Colombia to confront the thing that almost killed him.
I vividly remember the first time I saw Galeras again. Got off the plane, and there's Galeras at the end of the runway, and it's like this monster that really worked hard on killing me, and we sat there and talked about death for a few hours, and I survived, and now I'm back.